We find out the schedule in about 2 hours and 45 minutes. We can tell you the Cowboys face 6 playoff teams from 2016. They get the Packers at home. They're going to get a Thanksgiving Day game, as they always do. Seattle, KC, Green Bay among the home opponents. Away, a trip to the Black Hole and a trip to the defending NFC champions, the Atlanta Falcons. Let's go live to the star of the Ford Center in Frisco, Texas, Jane Slater. Camped out with the Cowboys today, where we often find her. Jane, again, we only know the opponents, don't know when they're playing them, don't know the full schedule, but what stands out there to you among those Cowboys schedule tidbits?
Well, a couple of things. Of course, the Giants. You listening to Kim earlier talking about JPP, thinking that's going to be one of the first games of the regular season, since that's sort of been the way the schedule's gone for these two teams over the last couple of years. This was a team that the Cowboys opened up their regular season against last year at home at AT&T Stadium. They lost that game by a point. It was also Dak Prescott's first game as a regular season starter for the Dallas Cowboys. Of course, then they went up to New York, couldn't beat them. That was the only team on that schedule last year that they couldn't find a way to get a W from. So interested in that one. Then also when you look at some of these road games, of course, they're going to the Oakland Coliseum. That was a matchup at one point last season. A lot of people thought that Oakland and Dallas could have met each other in the Super Bowl. And of course, two very energetic fan bases. And the other one that I think is going to be interesting is the trip to Denver. Something that could have also been very interesting had Tony Romo decided to have continue to play football. We would have seen how possibly that would have shaken out, but he'll likely be facing guys like Trevor Siemian or Paxton Lynch. So those are going to be some interesting matchups. And of course, when you look at the schedule, they faced 10 teams last season that had a winning record. And when you look at the schedule this season in terms of strength of schedule, they're tied with the Eagles for the 10th toughest one.
At 531, opponents' winning percentage, which is the only way we could actually figure out strength of schedule now, which is going on last year's numbers, which obviously once this season starts, you kind of throw out the window. A week away from the draft, Jane, the Cowboys sitting at 28th. What's the buzz out of that building behind you?
Well, you know, it's hard to say what their draft strategy is going to be. You know, they play these things close to the vest, as they should. You know, it's sort of the wheeling and dealing that Jerry Jones and company are known for. But I think it's easy to go ahead and glean that when you look at some of these off-season departures, guys like J.J. Wilcox and Barry Church, that they're going to need some help in the secondary. Of course, they brought Richard Blanton in. This was a guy that played for the Bills. Played 10 games last season, started 2. He gives them some veteran depth there, but that's not going to mean that they're not going to address that in the draft. A guy they've been high on, Obi Melifonwu. This was a guy that they saw at Pro Day, at Combine. They brought him here for a 30 visit, had a private visit up at UConn, so been high on him. And then also defensive backs. They lost Mo Claiborne and Brandon Carr. Guys like Tease Tabor, Cordray Tankersley, those are some guys that have been on the 30 visits. So really high on defense. They had very few offensive players that came out to the star during the 30 visits. So I think it's fair to say that their real emphasis in this draft is going to be defense, defense, defense. Defense, defense, and even more defense, especially you look at who's been coming in that building behind. Jane Slater, thank you so much. That is the star of the Ford Center.